Quick question. When was the last time you actually saw a baby pigeon? No, seriously. Not a picture, not a meme, in real life. Because apparently, and I'm just telling you what the internet is saying, birds, they're not real. Every single bird, every pigeon, sparrow, every seagull that has ever stolen a French fry from your hand, they're nothing more than government surveillance drones. That's right. They're not animals, not nature, not evolution. Just wings, wires, servo motors, and little robot bird eyes watching you struggle to parallel park and judging you for everything. And listen, I know how this sounds, but according to the theory, birds were exterminated between 1959 and 1971 and replaced with robotic replicas. They perch on power lines to recharge their little bird batteries, and they poop on cars as a means of tracking. And every time a pigeon stares at you, it's uploading everything. Which kind of explains why pigeons always look like they know something. Oh yeah, we're doing this one. Hey, and welcome back to the Average Joe Nerdcast. I'm Nate, your resident Average Joe, casual conspiracy tourist, and a man who now side-eyes every single bird like it owes me money. And first things first, just a quick check-in. I hope you all survived the holidays. I hope the leftovers slapped, and I hope no one started a political debate before dessert. And you know what? If they did, I hope you emotionally disassociated like a professional. Now, you might be asking yourself, if you're new around here, Nate, didn't you do an entire month about conspiracies? And yes, I did. And then, like I said in the last Control-Alt-Delusion episode, the response was so incredible, the series, it's staying around. It's going to pop up once or twice a month, like that one high school friend of yours that forgot how to grow up and just wants to couch surf all the time. Because, the internet will never run out of wild theories, confident nonsense, and ideas that sound fake until you remember someone has made a documentary about them. And today's entry? Who, buddy? This one is a modern meme conspiracy that escaped the internet and became a full-blown movement. I mean, there's signs, merchandise, protests, interviews. A straight-faced founder who refuses to break character. Today, we're diving into the birds aren't real conspiracy. The theory that claims all birds are government surveillance drones. And look, I promise we are going to laugh a lot. But we're also going to talk about where this came from, why it spread, why it works as satire, and why some people do not realize it's a joke. Because that's where things get really, really interesting. So grab some binoculars, unplug your bird feeder, and for the love of God, do not make eye contact with that pigeon. Let's get into it. Alright, so before we start accusing crows of espionage, we gotta answer the most important question of the episode. Where in the fuck did this even come from? Because unlike most conspiracy theories, this one didn't crawl out of a Cold War bunker, or a declassified CIA document, or a blurry PDF hosted on a website that looks like it was built in 1997. No, birds aren't real started, believe it or not, as just a joke. A very committed joke. A straight-faced joke. And then the internet did what the internet always does best. It picked it up, shook it violently, and asked, wait, is this serious? So back in 2017, a guy named Peter Mickindo was watching conspiracy culture spiral out of control. Flat Earth, chemtrails, crisis actors, people unironically yelling at clouds with PowerPoint presentations. And he had a thought. What if I made a conspiracy theory that was obviously fake, but treated it with the same confidence as the real ones? So he made one up. The premise? simple, elegant, and absolutely unhinged. Between 1959 and 1971, the U.S. government secretly exterminated all birds and replaced them with robotic surveillance drones. Why, you might ask? Because of course they did. And look, if you're going to spy on Americans, why not do it with pigeons that already ignore personal space? And here's where birds aren't real gets dangerous and hilarious. It copies every single trope of real conspiracy theories: a secret timeline, a hidden genocide no one noticed, fake animals, vague government involvement, do your own research type of energy, and evidence that falls apart if you think about it for more than 12 seconds. But it's delivered with absolute confidence. No winks, no punchlines, no, haha, just kidding, dude. Just a guy holding a sign that says, birds aren't real, and staring into the soul of a reporter like, why are you okay with pigeons watching you eat lunch? And what started as satire turned into protest signs, merchandise, stickers, rallies, interviews on real news outlets. A whole ass documentary, and people yelling at him angrily for lying to them, which is wild because he was lying on purpose. But the joke worked a little too well. Because here's the truth: some people didn't realize it was just satire. Others realized and decided to believe it anyways. And that's where this story stops being just funny and starts getting very 2025, if you know what I mean. You see, over time, the movement built out its proof. And when I say proof, I just mean birds sit on power lines to recharge, birds poop on cars as tracking markers, birds don't exist in photos from certain decades, you've never seen a baby pigeon, and birds migrate because that's when they're sent in for upgrades. Buddy, that's not biology, that's firmware. Birds aren't real spread because it hit a perfect storm. People were already suspicious of literally everything around them. Conspiracy language had gone mainstream. Satire and sincerity were impossible to tell apart online. And irony stopped being a defense mechanism and became an entire lifestyle. It exposed something uncomfortable: that confidence matters more than correctness, that repetition beats reality, and that if you say something with enough conviction, someone somewhere will nod and go, yeah, dude, that checks out. So that's how we got here. A fake conspiracy built to mock real ones that accidentally became indistinguishable from them. And coming up, we're going to examine the so-called evidence: the power lines, the bird poop, pigeons, behavior, baby birds, and why seagulls are either robots or just deeply malicious by nature. Spoiler alert, one of those is actually true. So take a quick breath, hydrate, and maybe don't look directly at that crow outside your window. But first, a word from one of our totally not suspicious, 100% real sponsor. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Like every time you step outside, a pigeon just happens to be on the power line, not moving, not blinking, just observing you? Well, you're not paranoid. You're just early. Introducing BirdAway Personal Sky Defense, the first home protection system designed to deter suspicious avian activity. BirdAway uses patented anti-chirp frequency technology to gently discourage birds from landing, hovering, or uploading your location to the government. Just install it on your roof, your porch, or your emotional support mailbox, and enjoy peace of mind knowing no pigeons pacing back and forth, no crows holding unexplained meetings, and no owls watching you like they know your social security number. And for premium members, upgrade to BirdAway Pro, now with night mode, thermal decoy breadcrumbs, and a small red LED that makes birds, 100% uncomfortable. BirdAway, because if birds were real, they wouldn't need firmware updates. All right, where were we? Yes. Birds, the government, and the extremely confident belief that pigeons are basically flying ring doorbells. So let's talk about that evidence. According to Birds Aren't Real believers, here's what we're supposed to accept as fact. Not vibes, not memes. Facts. Exhibit A. Why do birds sit on power lines? The cornerstone, the thing all believers in this conspiracy will bring up first. Birds sit on power lines. A lot. And according to the theory, they're not resting, they're recharging. Because apparently, birds don't need food or sleep, but what they do need is lithium ion batteries. You see, the logic goes power lines equal electricity. Birds plus electricity equals recharging drones. Case closed, right? Except real birds sit on power lines because they're warm. They're safe from any and all predators. They're elevated, and they don't get electrocuted because physics exists. But conspiracy logic does not care about physics. It cares about pattern vibes. If a bird touches a wire, drone. If a bird touches two wires, government error. And evidence B, you never see baby pigeons. And this one, it comes up constantly. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? And if you hesitate for half a second, they will go, exactly. Because apparently pigeons do not reproduce, are not born, and arrive fully assembled at age 40. The claim is baby pigeons are manufactured in secret facilities, released only when fully operational, and immediately assume their role as city surveillance units. Real quick reality check. Baby pigeons stay in the nests, in ugly, hidden places, because they look like fucking nightmares. But again, that answer isn't exciting. Secret factory birds is exciting. Evidence C. Birds all stop moving at the same exact time. Have you ever noticed how, sometimes every bird just kind of goes quiet? Sunset, the streetlights are on, and birds vanish. Believers in the theory will say scheduled shutdown period, end of shift, daily data upload complete. The idea is that birds power down at night, upload footage, receive new instructions, and reboot at dawn. Which kind of explains why birds start chirping at the same exact time every fucking morning. Not circadian rhythms, not biology. A schedule, a spreadsheet. Birds aren't waking you up, they're clocking in. Evidence D. Bird poop is too accurate. And this one is fucking unhinged, ladies and gentlemen. The claim bird poop isn't random, it's targeted. I guess because if a bird poops on your car, that wasn't an accident. That was a tag. A marking system, a chemical tracker, a way to flag individuals for further observation. And look, I've had a bird shit on my truck before, right after a car wash. And you know what? It kind of felt personal, but not Department of Homeland Security personal. Evidence E. Birds' behavior changed after the 1970s. And this is where they bring in history. According to the lore, between 1959 and 71, the U.S. government systematically exterminated all real birds. Why? Because birds could perch on surveillance wires and interfere with Cold War intelligence equipment. So the government replaced them with mechanical replicas. That's right. The moon landing was fake, but the bird replacement program, that's 100% funded and real. Every eagle, a lie. Every sparrow, a snitch. Apparently, Watergate wasn't about Nixon. It was about pigeons knowing a bit too much. Evidence F. Birds can sit on statues without moving for hours. You ever see a bird just not move? It wasn't blinking, it wasn't twitching, there was no soul behind its eyes. They'll sit on a statue like they're buffering. Believers in the theory say, well, that's standby mode, low power, minimal movement, waiting for activation. Normal people say, that bird is chill as fuck. But normal people don't have a cork board connecting robins to the NSA. Evidence G. Why are birds everywhere? And this is the big one. Birds are in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas, on highways, at the beach, in parking lots, on statues, watching you eat those French fries. They are the most ubiquitous animal on the entire planet, which makes them the perfect surveillance system. Cheap, disposable, ignored, because no one questions a pigeon, and that's how they get you. So, that's the evidence. Not one thing, not two things. A whole pile of coincidences, misunderstood biology, and the human brain screaming, this feels weird, therefore it is evil. But here's the twist. Most of this evidence falls apart the second you apply even a little bit of logic, which means, coming up next, we have to ask the real question. Why do people want to believe this shit? Why does birds or drones feel more comforting than the world is random and weird? This is where things are going to start getting interesting. But you know what's next? A quick word from our sponsors. Do you love feeding birds? Do you enjoy tossing seed into the air and watching dozens of feathered friends descend with military precision? Then congratulations! You may already be a part of the system. Introducing Skynet Feed, the only bird seed formulated to keep drones docile, predictable, and fully operational. Skynet Feed is packed with electrolytes, nanograins, and just enough mystery minerals to keep pigeons returning to the same exact spot every day at exactly 7:03. Simply scatter Skynet Feed on your lawn and enjoy the illusion of nature, while advanced avian surveillance units perform routine neighborhood scans. Skynet Feed, because real birds would need nests. Okay, so now that we've laid out the evidence, power lines, bird poop, and pigeons with a suspicious work ethic, and look, I can laugh at this bullshit all day long. I mean, we all can. But here's the thing. People don't believe this shit because they're bored. They believe it because it does something for them. So let's talk about the real question. Why does birds aren't real feel good to believe? So if the question is why this theory actually works on people, the answer's gotta be because this isn't really about birds. It's all about control, about comfort. It's about pattern hunting in a world that feels loud, random, and completely overwhelming. You see, humans hate randomness. Our brains are allergic to chaos. We'd rather believe there's a secret plan than accept shit just happens. Because you see, a plan, even an evil one, means someone is in charge. Birds as surveillance drones? Is that terrifying? Yes. But also, it's kind of weirdly comforting for these people. Because at least it's organized. You see, humans evolved to see patterns. That's how we survived. But sometimes that survival instinct goes rogue. You see birds on wires, birds everywhere, birds acting bird-like. And your brain goes, connect all of this immediately. And suddenly you're 6 YouTube videos deep watching a guy with a goatee and a ring light explain how sparrows report directly to Verizon, who then reports to the NSA. And then it's a safe, funny conspiracy. And that's the secret sauce. Birds aren't real feels low stake in the grand schemes of other conspiracy theories. It's not medical misinformation, it's not political paranoia, and it's not apocalyptic dread. It's goofy, it's memeable, it's weird enough to feel rebellious without requiring you to yell at Thanksgiving dinner. You can believe it, ironically, until you don't. Because you see, irony is a gateway drug. A lot of people start with, I don't really believe it, it's just kind of funny. And that's how it gets you. Because irony lowers your defenses. You laugh, you share, you nod, you say, okay, but this is weird though. And suddenly you're side-eyeing a cardinal like it just sent your license plate number to the government. Hey, Steve, why are you wearing a hat indoors? Because it's aluminum? You think it reflects beak-based lasers? Dude, it's a baseball cap. That's what Who wants me to think. Anyways, this conspiracy also feels like being in on something. Because like I've said in other Control-Alt-Delusion episodes, conspiracy theories offer community. They give you insider language, shared jokes, a sense of being awake while other people are asleep, a villain, and a narrative. Believing birds aren't real means you're not just some guy feeding pigeons. You're a truth knower. You've cracked the code. So yeah, this theory survives not because it's true, but because it's satisfying. It turns confusion into comedy, anxiety into structure, and everyday annoyances into a grand story. Which means next, we kind of need to talk about how birds aren't real became a movement, a brand, and one of the smartest pieces of internet satire to ever escape containment. Because that part, it's actually kind of brilliant. But first, a quick word from another totally real sponsor. Protect your home with a system that's already watching it. Introducing FeatherWatch, the only home security service powered by naturally occurring neighborhood birds. Why install cameras when pigeons already know your schedule? FeatherWatch features include real-time perch monitoring, advanced head tilt detection, suspicious seed consumption alerts, and full 360-degree beak-based observation coverage. Just look outside. If the bird is still there, the system's online. FeatherWatch. If you can see them, they can see you too. Okay, so we've covered where this came from, why people buy into it, and why the evidence folds like wet cardboard. Now let's do another really important question. If birds were surveillance drones, they would be the worst surveillance program ever to be launched. So let's kind of run this like a government audit. The first problem, birds are really bad at staying hidden, like historically fucking awful. They scream, they flap loudly, they fight windows, they steal french fries, they poop everywhere, and then they stare directly into your soul. So if you're building a stealth surveillance device, you don't design it to yell at 6 o'clock in the morning every damn day, or to attack its own reflection. That is not espionage. That's a malfunctioning Roomba with wings. Also, birds pick the worst people to monitor. They follow tourists, kids with snacks, people eating outside, the guy feeding ducks because he's lonely. You're telling me the government built a $1 trillion spy network and assigned it to watch a man named Gary throwing bread into a pond. Gary knows nothing. Gary is retired. So let's break it down by species. Pigeons, 0 stealth capabilities. They walk like they're powered by pure spite. They're constantly fighting each other. And they also get trapped in train stations and any other building they wander into. If they're drones, they're running on Windows Vista. Seagulls, openly aggressive. They commit crimes in broad fucking daylight. And they scream while they steal your food. No spy agency in existence says, yes, let's deploy the unit that announces itself like a banshee. Or what about crows? You know what? These ones, I'll admit, they can be suspicious. They remember faces. They do hold grudges. And they work in groups. If one bird is a drone, it's got to be the crow. But even then, they still steal shiny objects and bully cats. That's not exactly subtle. And owls. Just don't. I'm not opening that shit up. That's how horror movies start. Yes, Steve? Are flamingos long-range antennas? Dude, they're pink because they eat a lot of shrimp. Jesus Christ. And here's another issue. If birds were drones, this would be the most expensive surveillance program in human history. You'd need constant maintenance, repair, updates, global deployment, weather resistance, predators, and replacement units every time one flies into a ceiling fan. We can't even fund public schools properly, but we've got money for 12 billion robins? Sure, because that totally fucking tracks. And this is why, despite everything, Birds Aren't Real stays mostly funny. Because when you actually think about it, it just collapses instantly. Because it's not designed to be airtight. It's just designed to be shared. It's a meme with legs or wings, whatever. This whole thing just survives on one phrase. What if? What if birds weren't real? What if everything is fake? What if nothing is trustworthy? That question can be playful, but left unchecked, it can also rot your brain, which is why laughing at it together, it matters, because laughter pops the balloon. Okay, quick pause. Go stretch, refill your drink, and check your surroundings for those pigeons with suspicious posture. And while you do that, here's a quick word from a product that I totally didn't just make up in the middle of the night while trying to pad out this episode. Are you tired of unreliable Wi-Fi? Tired of buffering, lag, videos mysteriously pausing whenever a pigeon lands nearby? Upgrade today to FeatherNet, the world's first wireless network powered by absolutely real birds. With FeatherNet, you'll enjoy seamless coverage in parks, parking lots, and Walmart roofs. Ultra-fast speeds whenever bread is present. An automatic connection whenever a bird stares at you for more than 3 seconds. FeatherNet, because if birds were watching you, they might as well improve your signal. FeatherNet is not responsible for dropped calls, dropped fries, or sudden goose aggression. We've already covered how Birds Aren't Real started as complete satire. Very intentionally. The guy who started it has said that. But the internet has a really bad relationship with tone, especially nowadays. We live in a place where jokes look like real beliefs sound like jokes, and everyone's posting with the same deadpan confidence. So eventually, satire stops being read as satire, and it just becomes content. There's a little thing people call irony poisoning. It's when you say something ironic for so long in the same tone as sincerity that you forget where the joke ends. You start saying, birds aren't real, lol, but wouldn't it be wild if they weren't? Then, have you seen pigeons? And then suddenly you're arguing in YouTube comments at 2 o'clock in the morning with a stranger named Truth Eagle 1776 about avian charging stations. That's not belief. That's drift. And this is why Birds Aren't Real sticks around. It doesn't demand fear, or action, or demand that you cut people off. You don't have to really do anything. You just wear the shirt, share the meme, and enjoy the chaos. That makes it feel harmless, and most of the time, it absolutely is. But it also trains people to live in permanent nothing is real anyway mode. Because here's the danger, and I don't mean scary danger, I mean quiet danger. When everything is fake, then nothing deserves effort. Why care? Why learn? Why verify? If birds are drones, then fact survives, truth is optional, and reality is just a suggestion. And that's not Birds Aren't Real's fault. but it thrives in that environment. We joke about birds, we joke about flat earth, and we joke about lizard people. And most of us know it's just a joke. But the internet doesn't separate parody from performance or belief from trolling. It just flattens everything into engagement. And once that happens, sincerity does not win. Confidence does. And this is the important part. People who are smart, media literate, and skeptical still participate. Why? Because playing along feels safer than standing out. Because irony gives you an escape hatch. If I'm wrong, I was joking. That's not stupidity. That's a form of self-defense. And also, to be clear, if birds were drones, they would not be this bad at parking. I'm just saying. Birds aren't real works because it lets us laugh at distrust without committing to paranoia. It's a sort of pressure valve, but it also shows us something uncomfortable. We are really, really tired of taking anything seriously. And sometimes that exhaustion looks like a joke. Okay, so let's do the thing. Let's double down, stop arguing, stop debunking, and stop being reasonable adults for just 5 quick minutes. Let's say birds aren't real is 100% true. Every bird is a drone. Every pigeon, surveillance camera. Every sparrow, federal asset. Cool. I love that for us. Now let's walk through what that actually means. If birds are drones, this is the most ambitious project in human history. I'm talking billions of units, global deployment, flawless coordination, 0 whistleblowers, and somehow no budget leaks. Do you know what the government can't do? Launch a fucking website without breaking it in the process. But you mean to tell me they've nailed perfect avian flight mechanics, species diversity, migration patterns, and seasonal molting schedules? Come on, dude. And you're telling me there's a form somewhere in a folder at some government facility that says pigeon model P472, status, shits on statues, assigned region, local college campus, notes, aggressive, knows too much. Because if that document exists, it leaked already. It's probably on Reddit with screenshots and a guy arguing with everyone in the comments. And let's talk batteries. Because apparently birds sit on power lines to recharge, birds don't move in storms because firmware updates, and birds disappeared during COVID because maintenance windows. Bro, if the government cracked wireless self-sustaining micro-drones with unlimited flight time, they would not waste it on pigeons. They'd be selling it to Amazon or the military while wearing a trench coat. And here's my favorite part. Who's watching all the fucking footage? Because if birds are surveillance drones, someone is clocking in every single day to review squirrels also stealing French fries, birds fighting their own reflections, pigeons completely missing their landings and falling over, seagulls screaming at nothing at all, and one duck that won't stop attacking a Honda Civic. That's not intelligence gathering. That's Animal Planet with worse benefits. Also, real quick, if birds are drones, why are they so fucking stupid? Why do they fly into my windows? Why do they forget how doors work? Why do they scream at 4 o'clock in the morning like car alarms possessed by demons? And who fixes them? Because birds get hit by cars, eaten by my cats, attacked by other birds. They get stuck in Walmart and trapped in Home Depot rafters for weeks. Is there a government intern with a net? Are they chasing a goose through a Lowe's parking lot? Because I want that show. And also, if birds were drones, then I guess Canadian geese would already be classified as deadly weapons. And there is no debate there. And here's the through line. Birds aren't real survives because it doesn't ask you to be afraid of anything. It just asks you to laugh at the idea that everything's watching you, instead of making you panic about it. That's why it feels lighter than other conspiracies, you know? It's rebellion without rage, distrust without despair, and cynicism with a punchline. When the world feels overwhelming, jokes give us control. If you can laugh at it, it can't own you. Birds aren't real is basically saying, yeah, the system's broken, but let's not lose our minds over it. That's not stupidity. That's coping. Here's the dividing line of this whole thing, and it is important. Dangerous conspiracies demand belief. Funny conspiracies invite participation. Birds aren't real doesn't ask you to fear anything. It just asks you to play along. That's the difference between satire and paranoia. Birds aren't real worked because everyone was in on the joke, even when they weren't sure it was a joke. It mocked surveillance culture, corporate control, and government distrust, and internet misinformation, without ever weaponizing fear. That's not an accident. That's design. The conspiracy wasn't saying they're watching you, it was saying, isn't it wild how easy it is to believe this shit? That's a mirror, not a monster. You know, I can laugh at birds aren't real because it never asked me to be angry. It never asked me to cut someone off. It never asked me to choose fear over the facts. And it never asked me to burn the house down to feel smart. All it said was, hey, isn't this all just a little ridiculous? And yeah, it absolutely is. All right, let's bring this thing in for a landing. Because at the end of the day, birds aren't real is about the difference between a conspiracy that wants you scared and one that just wants you to laugh at the absurdity. Nobody lost family over this one. Nobody stopped trusting doctors. And no one spiraled into rage or isolation because of a bunch of pigeons. This one didn't demand belief. It just invited participation. It never said, wake up. It said, isn't this fucking ridiculous? And honestly, that is kind of refreshing. In a world where misinformation usually comes wrapped in fear, anger, and certainty, this was satire wearing a conspiracy costume. And that's why I can laugh at this one, because it never asked me to stop thinking. It never asked me to burn bridges, and it never asked me to be afraid. It just asked one simple question. How easy do you think it is to get people to believe something if you just dress it up right? And you know what? Turns out, it's very easy. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not birds or drones, but pay attention to how stories spread. Pay attention to who benefits. Pay attention to how fast certainty shows up when curiosity leaves the room. Laugh when it's funny, absolutely. Pause when it gets a little scary. And when something starts demanding fear instead of thought, that's your exit. So yeah, birds are real, and they're fine. Pigeons are annoying, but they're not recording you. And if they were, buddy, the government already has your location because you tag yourself on Instagram. So thanks for hanging out with me on this edition of Control-Alt-Delusion. Now you know the drill. Shout out time. First and foremost, to all of you listening, whether you've been here since the early nostalgia dives, or you jumped in because you heard me say the Denver airport might be a portal to hell and thought, yeah, I gotta hear this idiot explain that bullshit. Thank you. Every listen, every share, every DM, every bro, this unlocked a memory. Every single time you tell a friend this show is dumb, but in a really, really good way. That's how this thing grows. That's how it survives. And that's how it stays fun. Shout out to my player 2 for putting up with conspiracy research tabs open at all hours of the day, me pacing the house muttering about birds, and saying, just record it when my brain tried to overthink itself into paralysis. You are the grounding force in every timeline. Always. Shout out to Cap, mentor, and the man who planted the seed that said, stop sitting on your ideas and hit record. And shout out to my brother Ian, the only human in history that might be also a surveillance drone. I see how you are with those pigeons. And shout out to Pickle, certified chaos gremlin, unhinged nerd tangent machine. And one more shout out to all of you. If this episode gave you a laugh or a distraction or even just background noise while you breathed for just a minute, then it did its job, and I thank you. All right, that's it for this one. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and remember, if birds were surveillance drones, they'd still be doing a terrible job of avoiding your windshield. Stay gold, nerd bold, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Game over.